So this pillar of transformation and grace is really what it's going to do is it's actually going to set an expectation for everybody of what a lifetime looks like as we follow Jesus. And for those who haven't maybe quite bought into following Jesus, it's actually going to show you why God's kingdom is so welcoming, and it's going to offer you something that nothing else in the world can. And here's what we're going to do today. We're actually just going to look through what these terms mean, transformation and grace, and then we're going to look at the power that is available when we hold those two things together. So if you are into outlines, I'm into outlines, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to look at the invitation of transformation. We're going to look at the hope that grace provides, and we're going to look at the synergistic power of these two when we hold them together. That's it. So the first thing I want to lean into is just this invitation of transformation. And we'll discuss these details of what a long life looks like as we seek to follow Jesus. And you actually see this right in our text today. It said this. It said, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. My beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. We're going to talk about that fear and trembling bit, so don't worry. But when you put this all together, all of Paul's words, this means that there is actually an expectation. I don't know if we think about this enough. There is an expectation that every single person who has set their life to follow Jesus can actually expect something to happen. You should expect something to happen. And that thing is transformation. And this is just a change that occurs in people. But it's a very particular type of change. It does not mean that you're going to become more successful. It doesn't even mean that you will be happier. But it means that your lives are going to start looking a lot more like Jesus, and they're going to look a lot less like your own. And there's one promise that always comes with this, and that promise is joy. And you'll see how this shows up. But Paul even says that there was a good work that began in you. And this good work means just obeying God and loving God, and we do it so seriously that we do it with fear and trembling. So seriously that we do it with fear and trembling. Sometimes people have actually taken this text to mean that you should work out whether or not you are saved with fear and trembling. But that's not the point here. I want you to hear that. The point is not for you to evaluate your salvation. Which is good news because that sounds really awful. To just evaluate whether or not you are saved with fear and trembling. The point of this text is that you are already saved. You cannot lose it. It's based on God's love for you. It's not what you do in response. Matir, there was a commentator on this text. He actually says it is a very common trap for humans to think that way, based off of this text. To think that the security of our salvation is based on what we do and how we live. But in reality, God is the only thing that our salvation is based on. This is Matir's words. He says, salvation would be a wretchedly unsure thing if it were based on me choosing Christ. My will blows hot and cold. It is firm and unstable by fits and starts. It offers me no security of tenure. The only way to gain assurance then is this: to know that God has willed my salvation. That's it. That's the only thing it's based on. That we're saved because God willed it. And that alone is just the basis of our assurance. So that doesn't mean that you can have fear and tremble about whether or not you are saved. It wouldn't make sense. But what it does mean is that because we are saved and because God has willed our salvation, we want to work so hard in response to that we can even experience healthy fear and trembling because we want to do it so well. You want to do it so well that it'll actually make you scared that you're not doing it well. Like here, I think this is a silly example, but this makes sense to people. Last weekend, I was out of town. I was with my college roommates. We get together once a year. And there's a theme that is very consistent with all of us. And we're getting older, and our sizes have increased, and we don't sleep well anymore, and spicy food ruins us for like 5 days. So, but even though we're not really in great shape now, we weren't really in great shape in college. And I remember at times, my roommates would have their eyes set on a girl. And they would come to us and they'd be like, hey, I think I'm gonna see if I can take so-and-so out. In the back of our minds, we were like, good luck with that. Like, she is so far out of your league. And we would secretly mock them when they weren't there. But we would tell them that they had a great chance. And then we would just get to watch the chaos unfold after that. But I remember every now and then, we would believe they had zero chance of this happening, and they would do it. They would go and like ask this woman on a date, and like by a miracle of God, she said yes to some of them. And now the hard part was not over. What it did is actually just got worse from that point. And then you're like, oh no, she said yes. Like now I have to act like my life is together. I need to overspend on dinner. I'm going to do all of these things. But what they're actually doing in that moment is that they are like working out that relationship with fear and trembling. They want it to work so bad, they're literally freaking out. There's like Axe body spray everywhere in my house. It was disgusting. But that's what that is. Like you want it to work. You want to respond to something with so much strength and thoughtfulness that it will actually make you fear and tremble a little bit. Because you know that you actually got something that's way out of your league. And that's what we have with our salvation. It's like, why it's not much different for us. Like God came to earth, he died for us. He loved us enough to save us. He willed our salvation. And anyone who sees that clearly is going to work hard to love God in return, to take just full advantage of our salvation, which should make us fear and tremble too. Like, that's what this means. And it doesn't mean that we work to keep our salvation. We just work because of our salvation. And we're transformed, and we work on our transformation because we know what it was that God did for us in the first place. All this is just an imperfect response to God's perfect love. Martin Luther once said in doing a thought experiment on this type of thing, he said it is no doubt that you are saved by faith alone, but the faith that saves is never alone. He's saying it's accompanied with transformation. A saving faith will always lead to transformation. It means that anybody who is genuinely saved is going to work hard to see transformation in their lives because of what God did for them in the first place. It's like this isn't a dictator just like giving us rules for us to follow. This is a loving Father just showering us with things that we don't deserve, and we just step under his banner in response and say, I'm willing to change and I'm willing to follow you. That's what transformation is. But we need to actually step back because this has tons of implications of what this means for us today. For those of us who are inside the church, like you're a part of this church, those who follow Jesus, this pillar should actually make you ask a question. And the question is this, how seriously do I take my transformation? Do I fear and tremble in how hard I work to love God because he has saved me? Or are there certain things in my life that are just off limits, that I don't actually want to be transformed? Are there certain things that you don't want to give up control over, like money or politics, a secret sin? At Fellowship, we often call the long life of following Jesus the long journey. And this is an invitation to just be transformed for your entire life. And the beautiful thing about Jesus is that invitation never expires. But maybe we're just in a space where we actually need just a refresh look at that. Like, are we actually transforming? Are we changing? Like, maybe today is a day for you just to kind of like make a new commitment, give up some of those things that are off limits. Or maybe you're just on the other side of this and you're like, man, I'm leaning all in and I'm doing it. And if that's you, keep going. You're doing good work. But on the other side, there are those of us who are just kind of like exploring Christianity, and we're kind of just trying to see what like the church is all about. I think this is really encouraging for you too. Like, it is no secret that in our day and age, there is just like a restlessness. We're all poking around trying to figure out what life is about, what's the purpose, what's the meaning. We don't know what life means. We're just driftless right now. And it's right here, like, there is an invitation to step into life with God, to actually have something to work towards that has value, and with it comes meaning and joy. Like, this is the only North Star we could ever look at and ever follow that you can never lose. You cannot lose this one. And the truth is, like, it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, or where you're from, or what you look like. Everybody's got something missing from their life. And we all want more from life in the end. Like, in the end, when you lean in deep with anyone, there is something that we just like all want to change about ourselves. Lean in with anybody and they can tell you what that is. And Jesus is telling us that like real change, the change that we actually want to see, the change that matters, it's available to anyone, but Jesus is saying like it only comes through him. It's the only place you're going to get the change that matters forever. And you'll see in a second that he doesn't even just give you the opportunity to change, but he also helps with the change along the way. And that's the very thing right there that we're all looking for in the world. And I need to say this too. There are some implications about what transformation means for the church, and we have to get this straight if we want good two-way traffic on this bridge. This is going to prove the church's invitational nature, and I think this actually sits harder with people than we want to believe it does. So like, I want you to hear this. Because if we don't hear this, we're just going to be a mean-spirited and judgmental church. But here's an implication. What this means is that the church, in and of itself, is going to be messy. Just by principle, when you put a bunch of people together in the process of transformation who know they don't have it all together, by definition, we cannot expect them to have it all together. Right? Every single person needs to change, and that's the beauty of this place. We're all in the same exact spot. We need God's salvation and transformation just as much as the next person. Like, don't expect a church to be perfect. Charles Spurgeon once said in response to people who were like constantly looking around for churches, like which one's the healthiest, which one has the people I can relate to the most, Charles Spurgeon said, stop thinking that way. Don't do it. He said, if you want a healthy church and you want a perfect church, you should give up a hope of ever finding it, because the very moment that you joined that church, it just became imperfect. You're the problem. I'm the problem. Like, the very thing that makes the church messy is me, and it's you, and it's okay. That's what Jesus was interested in building. He was interested in using broken people to build a beautiful church. And that means that at times there are going to be people in the church that are going to bother you. Like, they're going to need to change in a different way than you. Because not everybody needs to change in the same way. Some are going to be working on their anger. Others are going to be working on their addiction. Others on spending money. Others on their codependency. Some on their anxiety and shame. And everybody has a propensity to be annoyed by certain types of change more than others. But what we need is just to remember that we need that change just as much as they do. But we just maybe need it in a different way. So like our church, what this means is like the church, it has to be a place where it is okay to not be okay. It has to be okay to not be okay. We don't want to stay that way, but it's okay if your life is messy. In Romans, it says this, but God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. You see, like the reason that we should pay attention to our annoyances and grievances with other people's transformation is that Jesus himself had every single right to be annoyed with us. He should have been bothered by us. He should have been frustrated with us for not changing fast enough, but that is never in Jesus' nature. Jesus, in knowing everything, he knows your past sins, he knows the sins you're making today, and he knows the sins that you're going to make in 30 years, and he still says, I'm not annoyed with you. I love you enough, even with all that being true, I love you enough to die for you. And there's a real power in knowing how Jesus felt about us and our change not happening very quickly and letting that change how we feel about others. And here's one more like just swing that I need to take, because this is like I hear this sometimes. Transformation, it sounds exciting, like we want to see change in people, but the truth, most people actually have a really hard time with it. Sometimes I've even heard in a statement like this, I wonder if you've heard this too. People will use it as an excuse to not attend church. Maybe you've heard it go like this. I like Jesus. I like the idea of Christianity, but I'm really bothered by the church. And I'm really bothered by Christians or evangelicals or like that subset of Christians. Have you ever heard that before? On the surface, it actually sounds like they like transformation a lot. They want people to be better and solid, mature humans who are adding to the world. But truthfully, if we think this way, we do not get transformation at all. And we don't believe it's possible. It takes an enormous amount of ego and pride to say that type of thing. Because what it exposes is that this person actually thinks that they are just better than everybody else. It's essentially saying if people could just change the way that I've changed, then the world would be a better place. I don't need to transform. It's just everybody else around me who needs to transform. That's a thought that we need to get out of the church because Jesus never thought that way. Never thought that way. He was consistently attracted to people who would make the church unattractive, and he invited them in. Like, go read the Gospels and look at the people that he hangs out with. It made everybody mad. But ultimately, like, we want a church that invites people into transformation and is a place of transformation, and then we can just celebrate with people, knowing that we all came in messy, we're all changing, no matter where we came from, and we're all welcome. That's what transformation is. But here's the second point. There's a hope that sits here as well. This is just the hope of grace. And grace really is just the rocket fuel of transformation. It's because of grace that we even have the chance or the energy to transform, and it's grace that keeps us going as we do this work. But here's what grace is. And I'm hoping that this actually just stretches us a little bit, but we often think about grace in terms of forgiveness, which is completely accurate. In the Bible, you find from the beginning that God is giving people things that they do not deserve. Even Adam and Eve, when you get at the beginning pages of the Bible, God asked them not to eat of one tree in the garden, and they don't listen to him. And they become completely ashamed of their actions. They hide from God, and they try to hide their nakedness with fig leaves because it's the only thing they had. And what God could have done is God could have shown up, and he could have said, man, guys, look, I told you one thing to not do, and you did it, so you get what you deserve. Enjoy your nakedness, enjoy your shame. Good luck without me, I'm out of here. But this is not what God does. It's not what God does at all. Instead, God shows them grace in this moment. In fact, we don't think about this very much. The very first sacrifice in the Bible happens right now. God himself kills an animal in their place, and he makes them clothes from leather to hide their shame. What a beautiful example of grace. You see, God knows the shame that you have, and what God does and has been doing since the beginning is letting something die in your place so that your shame can be covered and removed, just as it was with Adam and Eve. But this time, with Jesus, it's God himself who dies. It was Jesus' body, Jesus' spilled blood that covers our shame. That is grace. And it's God's grace towards us that will give us the ability and the will to transform. And any other reason to transform is going to blow up in your face. You have to know that. And this is where this is probably going to expand for us. But we often think about grace in the terms that are just described. It's like the thing that forgives us. It's the thing that gets us in the door. It welcomes us back into God's presence with open arms. It removes our shame. But grace is a lot more than that too. Grace is also the power and the help that we get on our journey of transformation. You see, it is the gospel of grace that saves us, but it's also the thing that we hold on to each and every day as we grow and deepen and develop in this long journey of following Christ. Romans 16:25 says this, "Now to him who is able to strengthen you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ." Like, do you see that? Grace, the gospel, strengthens our lives. It empowers us. It helps us actually live out the process of transformation. And sometimes what we can tend to believe is like something like this, that God saves us and then he just kind of sends us out on our way to do the work. But that's a lie. God's with us actually the entire time. It's his gospel and his presence that gives us power each and every day. Like, go back and read the very first verse that we read in our text today, Philippians 1:6. "I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." God has started a work in you, but is promising you that he's going to complete it. Like, do you see the pressure that actually relieves on us? It's not just up to you if you make it to the end. There was a couple months ago, we did a summer vacation to Canada, and we went to British Columbia, up on the northwest coast of Canada. We stayed in Squamish. I was very excited about this because Squamish is known as like one of the mountain biking meccas of the world. And I was like, I'm going to get to mountain bike in British Columbia, which none of my friends have done that. I'm going to brag about it. It's going to be awesome. And I took my girls to Whistler one day with Megan. We rented downhill bikes. Kids are like padded up, full face helmets. And we get on the gondola, and you know what I didn't do? I did not get off the gondola with them and say, "Good luck, kids. See you at the bottom. Hope you make it." I could have, but I didn't. But like, that's what we believe God sometimes does in our lives. Like, he just saves us and he's like, "All right, champ, go get it. See you when you die." That's not what happens. God's actually with us the entire time. Now, like when we got off the gondola at the top, this is a true story. We get off, everybody's got huge eyes at this point, and we asked the lift attendant, "Hey, where do we go to get to this one trail?" And they look over and they go, "All right, you see that bear over there?" And my kids are like, "Dad, what are we doing?" And he's like, "You got to go right. I want you to ride right at that bear. And when you get to that bear, that's the start of the trail." And the girls are like, "We are dead. This is not." And we get over there. The bear is fortunately moved by this point. And this is like when we have the talk. And I'm like, "Okay, girls, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be dangerous. You need to follow my lead here. And I want you to take your front tire and you're going to put it on my back tire. And where I go over, I want you to go over. And we're going to make it down safely if we do this together. But what I need you to do is follow me. And if you do that, you're going to be completely fine." Afton, 30 seconds in, shoots right off the trail into the trees. But she did not follow my tire. She wanted to go her own way. And I was like, this is just an example that just keeps on giving. But this is precisely what God does for us in this life. Like, he doesn't just drop us off at the top and say, good luck. He says, follow my lead. I've got all these resources, and if you follow me, I've got you. And your life is going to be filled with joy that you cannot lose. That's what grace is. It's what brings us in, and it's what guides us. It empowers us, and it helps us through. And here's what this means for us. For those like inside the church, you actually need to remember that God's with you. God actually has a vested interest in you completing his work. He put his reputation on you. He would not have said, if I started it, I'm going to finish it, and you have a chance of failing. Like, that should give you some confidence to keep going. And God has the power, and the help is available. But truthfully, there's going to be times too, just like Afton not following my tire, when you are going to shoot off the trail, you're going to try to do your own thing, and it's going to go bad, and you're going to sin, and you're going to be like, how did I end up here? And here's the thing about grace. Do you know what God does in those moments? He picks you up, he puts you back on the path, and he says, let's keep going. I've got more grace than that. God's supply of grace is much bigger than any error or any mistake, and he is glad to give it to you continually. And for those like outside the church, if you're wondering, like, if you want to walk across that bridge, like, do I want to actually just go see what's happening inside this church? But you recognize that maybe there's some things that are holding you back. Like, thought experiment. Let's think about this. God was willing to die so that you would even have the opportunity to take that walk across the bridge. And sometimes the hesitations that we have about not doing that, like we're like, I'm not quite good enough, I'm not quite ready, I don't feel like I have all my questions answered. So consider this. If God was willing for you to die so that you could take that walk, do you think those things are going to be barriers for God to give you grace and the power to transform into a person marked by joy? Maybe the thing that you need to do is actually just name that for God. Tell God where you are and ask God to show up. I think that dying and coming back from the dead is harder than our doubts. I think that's harder to do than to like answer questions. And I say this as like a fellow doubter. And if he did the first one, why would he not do the second one? Like, I would just encourage you to put God to the test. And let's like end today with this. This is just like the third point, the synergistic power of transformation and grace. And that word synergy is, it means two separate entities, when they're combined, are more powerful than the sum of their individual parts. This is an example I always gave when I was teaching science in high school, so yes, here we go. But dynamite, created by Alfred Nobel, fun fact, that the thing that the Nobel Peace Prize is named after invented dynamite. That seems ironic, no? So anyways, that might catch up with you later. But this dynamite is actually made of a few things. One is nitroglycerin, and the other is like a stabilizer, like clay. And we've always known that nitroglycerin was this like crazy explosive. If you dropped it, like it would just blow up and kill you right there. And it was just a really dangerous substance. It was very hard to handle. And what Nobel figured out is he was like, if I take nitroglycerin and I combine it with something like a clay, it actually stabilizes it and it won't explode if you drop it. So now all we got to do is just throw some fire in that thing, and now we got dynamite. And what is interesting though is that these two things, when you combine them, they actually made something more powerful and better than they were individually. Before, nitroglycerin, dangerous, will kill you. Clay, not exciting at all. So put them together, you get railroads across the United States of America, which is pretty neat. So transformation, okay, I'm done with that. Transformation and grace work the exact same way. Like these two, you actually have to hold these two together. And you might notice that each of these pillars in our bridge, they're combined, the two words are combined with the word and. Transformation and grace. And the temptation that we're always going to have is to switch out that and with an or. And churches and Christians will at times believe that it's transformation or grace. And that cannot be. It cannot be. And here's another thought experiment. If you place an or there, and the only thing that you ever consider is transformation, what happens? If you only consider transformation with no grace, well, you're going to burn out. And life is going to be really hard every single time you fail. All the blame, all your energy and failures only have one place to be carried, and it's on your shoulders, and it's going to crush you, and you're going to feel like a failure, and you're going to have no place to go when you fail because you're just going to think that you suck. When you fall back into sin, if you only think about transformation, the only thing you're going to think about is that you failed, how you're not good enough. What you need is grace to tell you that it's okay to not be okay, but we're not staying that way. So you get back up, you embrace the forgiveness, and you try again. And maybe you've been in these types of situations before, an organization or a church, where you constantly felt that you didn't measure up, like you were never told that you were good enough, and you're always coming up short. And that's a culture that just doesn't emphasize grace. They only think about transformation. And we got to be on the lookout for that. On the contrary, if there's an overemphasizing of grace, the other side of this, if you put an or there, and we push transformation to the corner, here's a second little experiment. What happens then if you don't talk about transformation and you only talk about grace? What happens is you end up with a belief system that does not change people at all. There's no growth. We're stuck in our sins and we're stuck in our failure because we don't call people to change, and it becomes an empty, powerless message because it doesn't do anything in people's lives. It leaves people with an addiction addicted. Mean people stay mean. The angry are still angry. The judgmental stay judgmental. And do you know who wants a church like that? No one. We want to change. This thought experiment is to show us that we actually can't put or between these two. It has to be and. And that's because Jesus was interested in transforming people with his grace. They were never meant to be separated, although we do it all the time. When transformation and grace are combined, do you see what happens? Lives change. We have power and forgiveness to keep going despite our failures and shortcomings. God is saying, get on my back tire, follow me. We're going to get through this together. And sometimes you're going to stop paying attention. And you're going to shoot off into the woods, and God's still there. He's going to pick you up, and you're going to keep going together, and things are great. That's joy. And the beauty of transformation is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't have to be perfect. Doesn't that just relieve the pressure from us? The reason that you don't need to be perfect is because Jesus was already perfect for you. It means you can take on Jesus' most challenging teachings, the things that feel impossible, and you get to put forth every bit of effort you have and know that even if you don't make it, it's okay. God's still with you, and you still get to keep going. That's the only transformation that can ever lead to joy, is when our effort doesn't have to be perfect, because it's not going to be. So when we just run after God and we feel tired and we're stuck in sin, we're lacking energy, we just get to look at God and remember that God put his reputation on us. And he said, what I started in you, I'm good to finish it. That's the power of the gospel. And when we know that, we can just constantly, over and over and over, with confidence, get back on the path of discipleship. Even when our faith is weak, it's doubting, we're struggling, we know with confidence that God's waiting there to give us more grace. And it's there the next time too. Let's pray. Father, we ask that you actually just show us grace. God, and that grace gives us the will and power to transform. God, we want to see this church be a place of transformation. And we want your grace and love to be the only thing that drives that inside of us. And Father, we ask you to just do this work in us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.